I'm triggered today. All right. So forgive me. I'm triggered and angry and disappointed and embarrassed. Whenever you hear people apologize in public, they're always like, I'm disappointed and embarrassed. No, not really disappointed, not embarrassed, not really surprised at what the NCAA schools have done in the last, since I got off the air yesterday. It's funny because I set it all up yesterday in the last hour for what happened today. But coming up on the show, this is Sports by Brooks on Fancred. Our producer is Cam Smith, here every day, Monday through Friday, noon to about 2 o'clock. And that's a scene setter, by the way. That's what we call it in the biz. We're setting things up. Dennis Dodd of CBS Sports, working on getting him on the show, because if there's like the number one person I want to get on the show, and the reason is he's so plugged in relationship wise with people who run schools and are in the athletic departments and also at the NCAA office. There's probably nobody who knows more people in that vein than Dennis Dodd, and has been around a long time. So he can kind of contextualize things, speaks from a place where, he's been covering it a long time. And he's not one of these clapping seals in the media. Not a bought off guy, dummy. Dennis is the best. Great guy, lives in Kansas City. So he's got that going for him. He's coming up. Hopefully we'll get him. It's we're trying to, it's such a busy day for him. We'd be lucky to get him. And Patrick Creighton is going to join us. He does a local show on ESPN radio in Houston. And also he's on national radio he does a show on SB Nation weekdays. So he's heard all over the country. He's on the number one station in Houston every day. And I want to talk to him about what's going on in the World Series, because good Lord, I'm enjoying the hell out of it. At least in the since last night, because if the Astros, I'm not a big fan of the Astros these days. Well, I'm not a big fan of the people that are running the team. And we'll get into that with Patrick, which is why we're having him on, by the way. I'm not just having anybody on to talk about the World Series. I'm having a guy on who isn't being unfair to the Astros, but in his commentary on Twitter, and again, this guy is a big time guy in Houston. I think he's like the only member, I could be wrong, I don't want to say that, but who's really kind of, telling it like it is with the situation with the reporter from Sports Illustrated. And he actually, through his Twitter, illuminated me on some situations with ownership of the Astros that I had not known in the past, giving me insight into what an endemic issue it is. And this is before, the non-apology and then, of course, eventually the owner comes around, Jim Crane, and does a kind of a vague retraction in addressing the reporter at Sports Illustrated. I don't want to mention her name because I don't want her to ever be attached to this in the future, because down the road, this reporter who didn't ask for anything to happen to her, I shouldn't even tell you what her sex is, right? But, in 5 years or 6 months, this thing's going to follow her around for a long time. It's going to be memorialized. And now you know how it works. If something happens online, Jesus, who knows? Who knows what a potential employer or acquaintance or anybody will see about you online, because now it's like your credit score, social credit. They have social credit in China. Well, we kind of do too, right? A little bit different. But so the point is with her, when you look at what the Astros came out with initially, they reported it as fact that this was a fabrication, that this reporter made it up. And as a reporter, and I've been not a journalist, writing things down in a newspaper, but I have written things down on a website, 40,000 posts on Sports by Brooks. Never been served a lawsuit, by the way. 40,000 posts, got people fired justifiably, things like that for things they shouldn't have been doing. But all you have in her position is her reputation of integrity. That's it. That's what you trade in, you traffic in as a reporter. Trust, integrity. You're trying to get information from people. That's what she does. She's not a columnist sitting at home giving her opinion, or a loudmouth like me blathering on about things. You know, she's got to go and face people every single day. She's got to get hired to do those things. And so when a Major League Baseball team puts out a statement that you're a liar, you made something up, and this is the World Series. This is the night the Astros went to the World Series. You can't erase that. You can't unsend that. And in 5 years, what if somebody sees the Astro? I mean, nobody's going to remember this. Right now, half of you probably don't know the story or know very little about it. But I can tell you from experience dealing with these things, not as they're directed at me, but understanding them intimately. Because when I've written about people, I had a situation a while ago, a few years ago, where I found out from multiple sources that an announcer, play-by-play guy at ESPN, was sexually harassing his sideline reporter. You don't even remember it, do you? But this was a major play-by-play announcer, Ron Franklin, who did college football for years at ESPN and was the voice of the Texas Longhorns. And I broke the story, and he was fired because of it. But I was above board, and I vetted them. Well, I didn't, at the time, I had exposure legally because, I was just starting the website, just a guy. So I vetted the hell out of it and was still terrified when I initially posted the story, but I knew it was 100% true by then. But still, you have that in the back of your mind. I don't have a fleet of lawyers like they have at Sports Illustrated. Presumably they do. So, and by the way, I'm disappointed that Sports Illustrated didn't come out more forcefully in support of her. And I don't think it's a coincidence that Sports Illustrated has just changed hands, and now they're with these two idiots who are treating it like, I don't know. Let me think. Just like any, I really want to talk about Sports Illustrated because there's a lot of different angles to that story. And in a sense, I mean, when you look at what's happened, Sports Illustrated, it's still great because you've got Bert Breer there, you've got Ross Dellinger there. There's a lot of great people there. That's just two, but there's a lot. And Charlotte Wilder, by the way, is awesome. Charlotte Wilder, look her up on Twitter. Great, funny on Twitter, but a great writer. Oh, you don't like her. Cam Smith doesn't like her. Why don't you like her? Charlotte. Oh, we'll have to talk about that. But I like her. I like what she does. I'm not like a super fan. All right. I'm not a super fan of Charlotte Wilder, but I've watched her. And by the way, what your criticism is, we'll talk about this later. But I just, what she's like, though? She is like the person you want to just hang out with. You would, if you're going to take a car trip, if I was going to get in the car and drive to like Bakersfield, she would be a funny person to have on. She might listen to music you don't like on the radio, but I would like to think that she would let me change the station, right? I would like to think that if I ordered, I'm not talking, I wish I was in a car with Charlotte, the type of person that when you get food, fast food, and they start eating your food, start eating your fries, I would like to think she's not that person. But that's what I mean, that I think she's a good writer, and she's done a talk show, I think, on Sports Illustrated's video side. But there's a lot of great people. I mean, Bert Breer is at the very forefront. He is one of the members of the vanguard of national NFL media. And Monday morning, MMQB, Monday Morning Quarterback, is second to none in coverage of the NFL, which is saying something. So, but a little bit like Deadspin yesterday. I mean, wow, there's so many things going on right now. And I'm tempted to cover it. But this thing with college, and I'm kind of in a holding pattern right now because we might get Dennis, we might not get Dennis Dodd. But so I don't really want to dive into what I'm going to dive into. I'm going to spend plenty of time on it. And that is what came out from the NCAA schools. I don't want to go nuts right now and be triggered. Wow. I got Cam Smith, our producer, is just got some intel over there. We'll address that later. But as it pertains to SI, it reminds me a little bit of what's happened at Deadspin. Both outlets have been bought by more than one company now and changing hands. And now it's gotten to the point where they're at the bottom of the barrel. I'm talking about as a company in who are the individuals that have been charged with running this journalistic enterprise. Now, that said, Sports Illustrated is much different than Deadspin in that they have people who are at the top of the business. Chris Mannix, another guy who people consider to be the top of the boxing business. Absolutely. So they're different than Deadspin. I just want to say a couple of things about Deadspin, all right? Because Deadspin, if you haven't heard, some writers for Deadspin posted tweets, the same tweet that complained about autoplay videos on the website that this new company that has bought Deadspin has started to place on pages on the website. So the writers tweeting out complaints about autoplay videos, right? And directing their followers to contact, management to complain. And so then management comes out and deletes those tweets. And in point of fact, it was the union. I didn't plan on talking about this, by the way, but the union for the writers at Deadspin. That's the first thing. Okay. Union. This company is on life support. It's on fumes, and you have a union. And this is not, I think it's their own union, if I'm not mistaken. Like the Ringer has, this tiny group of people. They're not part of a larger organization. Not that you can't, I absolutely support what they're doing, philosophically, 100%. But I mean, this Deadspin could easily be shut down in 5 minutes before I'm done on this show right now. So I don't know. It's just the business has collapsed, at least their side of the business from their perspective when it comes to, that's why I'm doing this show. A big reason why I've decided to really leverage my 25 years of broadcasting, but doing talk shows for as many years as I've done them. And I've been meaning to do this. And thank goodness for Fancred giving us this opportunity, and we can do it uninterrupted, which is extraordinary. It's never going to get better than this. When you can go on and you can reach a lot of people and you can have whoever you want to have on, it's unbelievable. It has been a revelation doing this show. And I can't tell you how much I love doing it. But that's a big reason why I'm doing this. And of course, I've done television. I've done KMBC4 here in LA, Fox 11 here in LA. I used to be on all the time, regularly. I did a regular bit every Sunday on KMBC4 for 2 years. And, but so it was kind of time for me to do it anyway. It was way overdue, as I relied. Most people knew me based on the website. But now that side of the business, when it comes to running a website and you're not ESPN or one of the big conglomerate companies who have this enormous pipeline of people, like a great example would be MSN.com. MSN.com is one of the biggest websites in the world because of Windows. And they don't have to rely on you or me to buy Surface or you or me to buy a PC. They have such an enormous enterprise division. Microsoft is built on business to business, right? That sort of thing. So is Oracle. Oracle, that you talk about a solid business plan. So, but MSN.com is the home page of Windows. So anybody who gets Windows or goes through those god-awful updates, Jesus, that's why I don't have a PC anymore. Talk about a surveillance state. Gee, Windows is the worst. But so if you don't have that kind of pipeline and you're the company involved with Deadspin and you're relying on organic, if you will, or something much more akin to it, closer to it, the ad business, right? The ad business specifically online has collapsed. It's very different. I know a lot of people who have run in my circle of friends who have run sites similar to mine who were very successful and made millions of dollars, right? And who have all but given up on the business, running these websites that are independent, if you will. You're not gonna have an independent website without by just running network ads from ad agencies. It's just not going to happen. You can't justify the costs of bandwidth and hosting it. So that business has collapsed. So you have to put it in that context when you are looking at what's happening at Deadspin. The Ringer, you might say, wow, that's similar. It is somewhat similar. And Deadspin should be a lot closer to the Ringer in prominence. And there's reasons why it isn't, which I'll tell you here in a second, tell you about. But the Ringer relies on Bill Simmons, the brand. And Bill Simmons is able to leverage his a jillion Twitter followers and profile in the media and relationships that he has in the media. And then, of course, his podcast. Everything is centered on his podcast. He's been able to leverage those things extremely effectively in bringing in big brands that advertise on his website and on his podcast, And so it's this virtuous cycle. But when he starts the Ringer, obviously he's going to have investors and seed money and all those things. But the key to him succeeding ultimately at the Ringer is not so much having to deliver traffic, it's his relationships. Now, you can't have no traffic, and you see the virtuous cycle. It just keeps getting better and better and better because he's vigilant. You can tell when you listen to Bill Simmons' podcast, particularly if you do, next time you listen, keep in mind that Bill Simmons is consumed with the profile of his advertisers. He's consumed by it. And so he's the one guy, when you listen to his podcast, this podcast is Bill Simmons' podcast brought to you by Skittles. What? It's brought to you by Skittles? What are you talking about? Right? Nobody's podcast is brought to you by Skittles. Oh, yes, there is one, Bill Simmons. Now, one day it'll be Skittles, and then the next day it'll be Castrol Motor Oil or whatever. It's just like these non sequitur brands. And he clearly, and I'm not saying he's not getting paid for it. I'm sure he is. But that's what I mean by he is consumed with the appearance that he gives with his advertisers, right? That's a credibility play to an extent. I'm not saying he's not doing it because he's making a lot of money on it. I'm sure he is. But it's just as important to put it this way. If an online book, or an offshore book or whatever, there's nothing wrong with them. But if they offer Bill Simmons more money than Reese's or Hershey Company or their ad agency or buyer offered him, he would probably still go with Hershey or Reese's. He's positioning his brand, and it's a virtuous cycle. So distributors hear that, people who can bring him traffic. Agents hear that, and they want to bring him their clients for interviews, whatever it is. So it's very much a brand play, leveraging his relationships, his profile, all those things, man, come together. And he's done a masterful job at it, extremely meticulous. But next time you listen to his podcast, listen for, and of course, he's got the requisite network advertising that you hear on a lot of ZipRecruiter, right? You know what's not smart? Blah, blah, blah. At ZipRecruiter. So he has those too. But like in the case of ZipRecruiter, I think they're like a, they present a show, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm sure he gets paid a lot of money from them. But Deadspin they don't have any of that. And they never did. And while I'm not condemning the people who were there writing, the fact is, from the very beginning, it's an alternative place. It's cool. It's fine. But Deadspin's success, to a certain extent, has always been a function of the Gawker network. Now they really don't have that anymore. There's no identity like that anymore. And they're not getting traffic and all the SEO from that. And from the very beginning, this was not a website that was overly sports oriented from the very beginning. That's the big issue right now is, so after the Union for Deadspin's writers posted this tweet about, you should get in touch with our management to tell them to take these autoplay videos off our website. Management comes out and then sends a memo to editorial, all the editorial for Deadspin saying, stick to sports, right? And then all the writers for Deadspin tell the world what management is telling them. They're telling us to stick to. So that's what happened. And then one of the editors who I know, Barry Pachevsky, was fired, I think in the last 24 hours. And he announced it on his Twitter. I don't know exactly when he was fired. But a very high-profile guy for Deadspin was fired because he had revealed this memo in which management had told him and everybody there to stick to sports. So he was fired. And the thing with Deadspin is there really hasn't been a huge outpouring of support. A little, but not what some people might expect. And it's similar to Sports Illustrated in that way. You didn't really see a huge emotional outpouring, which I think is an indication, especially in the case not of SI, but of Deadspin, of making a huge deal out of that. If you work there and you're a writer, probably not a good idea. You don't really have a lot of leverage in that situation. And if you try, you're probably overplaying your cards. And I think there is some legitimacy to management telling their writers, hey, look, what should have happened was they should have had a meeting and said it face to face and laid out specific reasons, justify what they were saying. Look, what I told you about traffic and ads and how they do it at the Ringer. And maybe they're doing really well at Deadspin, but I somehow doubt it financially. And so, to me, when you work for someone, you're a partner, or that's the way it is. You're a team member, team player. And to rip the people that you're with just makes you look bad to other people, right? Work with the people who you are with to the best of your ability, whatever the situation is. Deal with what you've got to deal with, right? And make the best of it while you're with that organization. I understand if you were working for Henry Ford in 1928, it was different, or you were a coal miner in West Virginia, and maybe to this day, it's somewhat different, right? But in my situation or an editorial situation or a media situation, for the most part, work with the people that you're with, try to figure it out behind closed doors. To do it this way, when you're kind of a niche situation already, and it's only kind of fallen off the last few years. I was, and this has happened before. I mean, I think they did a big, Laura Wagner, I think from Deadspin did a big expose, if I'm not mistaken, on management that had just purchased them. So, but what I wanted to mention here, and I'm going to get to the NCAA in 1 second. I wanted to mention stick to sports because I've kind of refined my, based on what's going on with Deadspin. The thing with Deadspin is, I think management has an argument to make. They've got a network there that is Deadspin's part of. Management owns other websites, and Deadspin's part of that network. They're trying to sell a network of sites. That's how they make money. I doubt that they're targeting one site for an ad buyer. And so they're telling the ad buyer, look, we've got news over here, we got entertainment over here, we got sports here. And then the ad buyer is saying, well, I just pulled up Deadspin and they're writing about, clowns today, or they're writing about, opioid abuse or something like that. It's something that is totally unrelated to sports. And they are. I don't know about those subjects, but Deadspin does do that. Non sequitur stuff. And, they've got columnists that have been there for a long time. And if you have an affinity for them, great. And here's the thing. If they're making a ton of money for the company and they're all doing really well, it's not an issue. It's like ESPN. If Tony Kornheiser wants to talk about his hemorrhoids, go ahead. You're the highest rated show, and they are during the day at ESPN. And your Q rating is through the roof. People love Tony Kornheiser. Don't ask me why, but they do. So if he wants to talk about something beyond sports, he can do it all he wants, right? But if you're not in a position where you're making a lot of money for someone or a company, right? You don't have a lot of that financial capital behind you, goodwill capital behind you, and there's not a lot of that either at Deadspin. Because of what's happened before. They've exposed their new owners before with posts on their own website. I think that management with Deadspin has a point. And in fact, and they're on the front lines of ad sales. And when you're basing your website on ad sales, good luck, right? So, but specifically with Stick to Sports, when it comes to me, what we're doing right now. All right. I'm going to talk to you about what's going on with the NCAA schools here right now. We're going to have Patrick Creighton from SB Nation and ESPN Radio in a second to talk about the World Series. And this is Brooks Melchior here in Los Angeles. We do this, and we're at the bottom of the hour. It's not radio, Brooks. But this is Brooks. I'm in LA. Yes, Sports by Brooks. I am a real person. I do. I'm not just two-dimensional on your screen. My mouth is moving. But I do this every day on the Fancred mobile streaming platform. If you want to jump in while I'm talking about something, click on the fan line icon on your screen. And we will literally put you on the screen with me. And I'm not kidding. So click on that icon, or you can leave a comment below. So don't think that this is all just a one-way conversation. It isn't. If you want to weigh in, you have ways to do it. So we've got, by the way, Patrick Creighton will be coming up here before the end of the hour. That's going to be interesting. Very interesting. So like with the NCAA as an example, I'm going to give you some analogies or things surrounding that situation that will enhance your understanding of something that is sports related. And the beauty of Stick to Sports is you can pretty much cover most societal issues that are significant, because sports now just especially in the last 20, 25 years has moved to the center of our culture. And look at it this way. Think about you as a sports fan. Think about you as a sports fan. Everybody watching or listening to me right now, you have a team. You have something that you're interested in, right? And that's based on what? It's based on a city. It's based on a stadium. It's based on something in which you share an identity with millions of people. You identify with a team, and millions of other people do. You have that connection. Everything is intertwined. And what is much of that fandom that you have based on? It's based on stadiums that require politics to get them built, right? And organizations, whether it be the team or the school or the network, that have a fleet of high-paid lobbyists in Washington and state capitals. And I'll guarantee you right now, the NCAA schools are lobbying in every state and in Washington to prevent anything from happening. Despite the fact that they want you to believe something is happening. So my point, and I'll close on Deadspin and all that stuff and put it over there. I didn't mean to talk about it in the first place, is that what they're talking about in the context of Deadspin management is they're literally doing something that's completely detached, seemingly, from sports, writing posts. And I remember I didn't read Deadspin for like 2 or 3 years. And I still don't read it all that much, because it's never been it's never from the very beginning been a site where you go there and say to yourself, you know what, I'm going to learn something today, or I'm going to have some information come my way like, wow, I didn't know that, as it pertains to something I'm interested in. No, you're not going to get that. Now, you might get a clever turn of the phrase. You might laugh. You might, I don't know, become attached to a writer, something like that. But it's never been a place where news is broken. Never. I can't think of one situation where they broke a big story. Zero. So that's why I don't visit it. It's like podcasts. If you're into somebody's personality, their idiosyncrasies, their, stories about their family life and all that stuff, and they're doing a sports show, then fine, you're into that. That's great. But I'm a guy that when I listen to something, I want to be, wow, I didn't know that. That's interesting. And that's not Deadspin. It never has been. And now you add in an increasing number of completely non-sports posts. You have a network of sites that covers those issues. And I'm convincing myself right now, it's understandable. But you've got writers with extremely strong personalities, and that's great. That's a strength. But let's try to apply it to our mission here and what we're telling people who are willing to spend money to support us, what we're telling them you're doing. All right. And if you're not going to do us, let us know. That's what it's all about. So when they sent that memo out, which shouldn't have been done, it should have been done. It could have been done on a conference call, whatever it is. What happened? Nothing could be more predictable than Deadspin writers posting the memo that you want them to stick to sports, because they did an expose on you when you bought the company, for crying out loud. So, I don't want to make any predictions there either, because it's too bad that Barry Pachevsky was fired today by Deadspin. And on the subject of Barry, the reason Barry is at Dead, this is my opinion, but in all likelihood, the reason Barry is at Deadspin, was at Deadspin, and you may or may not have heard of him, is he put an ad on Craigslist, I think it is, years ago. I don't know how long ago, 10 years ago. He advertised his services as a writer on Craigslist. And I was hiring at SportsbyBrooks. At one point, I had like 15 writers, part-time contracted contributors, and a full-time guy at SportsbyBrooks. And when I was in a hiring mode, I found Barry on Craigslist, hired him, and then eventually, like so many writers at SportsbyBrooks, he went on and got a great job at Gawker. And it's turned out not to be a great job in the end, or a job at all for him. But that website is struggling. I'm not going to say they're spiraling, but it's starting to look that way. But hey, look, I wish those guys nothing but the best. And unfortunately, I mean, we haven't even talked about the Hulk Hogan thing. And I will say this about Nick Denton. I don't have to say anything about it. The guy's an a-hole. The guy was an a-hole, and he deserved what happened. Absolutely deserved it. As did, I don't want to get into names. I want to move past that. So coming up, we're going to talk we'll talk some World Series. We're going to talk to ESPN radio host in Houston, Patrick Creighton. And I'm going to now cover what's going on. And, it's one of the lead stories. I mean, they're actually talking about this. A lot of times, the things that we talk about, I'm bringing them to you because I know they're not going to be brought up, and I know they're important or interesting, or, you're going to be entertained, going to make you smarter. You're going to win a bet, tell grandma at Thanksgiving a story because of what you heard here. But in this particular case, it's all over everywhere today. So much so that when I went on Twitter, we have clips today of it, people opining on it on places like ESPN's Get Up. It's on the great Yahoo Finance show. I think we have a clip from Daniel Roberts. In fact, so the NCAA came out yesterday after this show, right after I got done, and announced that they were going to allow endorsements for college athletes. This groundbreaking move, right? Like it's like that. If it was actually true, which it's not, like that's a big deal. Hey, the people who play college sports, and that we've made trillions of dollars off, thanks to their name, image, and likeness, we're actually going to allow them to be compensated for their name, image, and likeness. We're allowing them to be compensated. Now, we're not going to pay them, but they have that opportunity. So that is what the NCAA portrayed yesterday. And that's what the clapping seal media, not everybody. In fact, I've been pleasantly surprised. But the majority of media out there, especially non-sports media, is just reporting it as fact. And why wouldn't they? Because it's 114 years of this. It's endemic that amateurism really exists. And it's understandable that people would not see that the NCAA is lying. It's lying. First of all, the NCAA is the schools. Let me give you an example. Michael Drake is on the board of the NCAA. He's the president of Ohio State. Michael Drake has said on multiple occasions in the last 3 months on the record in public that if USC follows the state law that was passed in the California Assembly recently that would allow USC football players to be compensated for their likeness, if USC follows state law, the NCAA is going to kick them out. And his athletic director, Gene Smith, has also come out, and I think we have some comments from him on a clip, one of the clips that I have sent you, Cam. And his athletic director has come out and gone one more, doubled down and said, we're not scheduling USC now. Because of why? Because they might actually follow state law. Wow. So as everybody is reporting that the NCAA has come out and said that they're now going to allow endorsements. This is all chapter and verse when it comes to gaslighting, when it comes to obfuscation, classic propaganda techniques. This is absolutely the big lie. I don't know if you know what the big lie is or what it means, and I'm not going to necessarily go into the origin of it, although it involves a certain country before and during World War II, the big lie. But what the NCAA is doing is quadrupling down on the lying that it's done over the past 114 years. Now, in a statement at ncaa.org, which you're probably unaware of, if you're just following television or you're not really following anybody else and you're not really paying attention to what I'm doing on Twitter, the NCAA posted today on ncaa.org, right? The day after they announced, oh, we're going to let athletes benefit financially from endorsements, the NCAA put up a post saying the California law that will be enacted in 2023 is unconstitutional and harmful to college athletes, as it will lead to them becoming employees. All right. What's that law entail? One thing, it allows athletes to be paid if somebody wants to use their name or image, not by the school, a third party. And that is unconstitutional, according to the NCAA schools, in the post that was put on ncaa.org. And then I tweeted out at SportsbyBrooks on my Twitter. Right. So while they're saying, now, what's the pretense for them saying athletes should allow to be compensated for endorsements? The pretense is that law, right? But wait a minute, it's not legitimate. It's unconstitutional. What are you talking about? Now, a big reason why the NCAA is doing that and now the other thing, I told you earlier about what the president of Ohio State and his AD have said in the last 3 months. Repeatedly, because of that California law, we're not going to schedule USC. Right? And Michael Drake at Ohio State is on the board of the NCAA. Ohio State. So, but we're also being told, oh, they're just going to go along. Right? No. What they're saying is, what they're setting up is the schools, not some organization that's independent in Indianapolis. That's BS. Right? We're going to run the clips in 1 second. I want to do Patrick first. Patrick Creighton's coming up. Cam Smith, our producer. I want to do Patrick first, his interview, and then we're going to get into the clips. We'll have some time. And go ahead and look for clips if you want on your own, Cam. We've got several, but if you see anything popping up, because there's stuff going on right now, it's the talk of the media, sports media, and otherwise today. It's exploding. But we've got the scoop, what's really happening. And what's really happening is when the NCAA puts that on its website, it's the schools, and you've got the president of Ohio State, and there's many other people. In fact, we ran a clip yesterday, I think, from AD, or did we? We didn't run that clip, did we? I don't think we did. I have a clip from the AD at Southern Illinois University saying that it would really hurt their athletic department if athletes were compensated by third-party people outside, not even the school, outside the school, paid them, for their name, image, and likeness. That would really hurt us and non-revenue athletes. So you have all of that coming from the schools, and the NCAA is giving you something that's 180 degrees different. And I think one of the reasons is, of course, and then you get the statement about the California law. I think what you're seeing here is the NCAA is setting things up to not follow state law, to ignore the California law if they have to, and threatening the other states, lawmakers in the other states. Look, if you think about passing this, you might want to think again, because we think it's really harmful and it's unconstitutional, right? And our leadership, our membership is ready to stop scheduling USC because of it, to freeze them out, to kick them out of the end, and kick UCLA out. I'm mentioning USC because it's a high profile school, but we're not just talking about USC. We're talking about UCLA. We're talking about Stanford, Cal, Fresno State, UC Santa Cruz, Banana Slugs, Chico State. Every school that competes under the auspices of the NCAA, well, they're screwed. That's what they're clearly saying, not implying. The NCAA, the schools. I should just say NCAA schools, because there's no difference. And I laid it out ad nauseum yesterday, why there's no difference. One of the tragedies, though, of the cynical response of I'm going to get to that later. I first want to mention, by the way, as we're right up against our interview with Patrick here in a second, I want to at least throw out the fact that, and you'll see this in some of the clips, because in the next hour, we're going to do some clips. And you'll get to see what everybody's saying. And because it's really important. All sides of it. But what you see in some of these clips is referencing EA Sports and bringing the EA Sports game back. And I'm going to talk about that. We talked about cynicism a second ago, what's going on with the NCAA and all that. If that's a motivator here, I'm just speechless. I guess I'm not speechless. I'm talking for 2 hours about it. But speaking of talking, let's talk to Patrick Creighton, who is an ESPN radio host and a host for SB Nation Radio, and a great follow on Twitter. And I'm thrilled to have him. How you doing, Patrick?
Hey, Brooksy, how you doing, brother?
I just want you to know, and I know I've said this on DM, but man, you have a great Twitter feed, and your coverage of the situation with the Astros off the field, for me, has been a revelation. You really have done a lot to educate me, the context of the situation beyond just, the superficial report and stuff that we've gotten. So thank you for that, man. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
So, first off, let's talk a little bit about the series. And, just what are your general impressions right now, where we stand?
A historic series. This has never happened before, that the road team has won 6 games in a series, let alone 6 in a row. This has never happened. Not in baseball, not in basketball, not in hockey. This is just completely unbelievable. If before the series, somebody would have said to you, hey, the Nationals are going to beat Garrett Cole and they're going to beat Justin Verlander twice, this is a 4-game series. We're out. If somebody said to you, hey, the Astros are going to go to Washington and they're going to win every single game in Washington, you'd think max 5-game series. Yet we're going to get the greatest treat in all of sports, Game 7. If I'm the Astros, I'm not wearing home unis tonight. Home unis are bad in the series.
Burn them.
Lights.
You're going to burn them. Have a ceremony in the parking lot beforehand, right? Tailgate with the fire from the – what are your thoughts on Greinke? How much rope do you think he's going to get?
I think he's going to get about the same rope he got in Game 3, which is once he gets into that once he turns the line over the second time, I don't think he's going to get an opportunity to see the line the third time. So if it takes him 3 innings, 4 innings, however long it takes him to get to the lineup twice, I think that's what he's going to get.
What about Garrett Cole? What are the odds we see him tonight?
If it's not a blowout where the Astros are getting pummeled, I think there's about a 100% chance you will see Garrett Cole coming out of the bullpen for at least an inning. It's the third day after a start, so this would normally be his throw day. So his throw day is going to be he's going to go in and give him an inning. If he can get through an inning with 6 pitches, maybe he can give him 2 innings. I think it'd be highly unlikely, but Garrett Cole is going to pitch today. It's Game 7. Everybody but Justin Verlander is on the docket. And if you're the Astros, Brad Peacock is not in the circle of trust. All right, Chris Davinsky is not in the circle of trust. Those guys are not pitching tonight unless it's like 11-0. I think they want to keep it to, Greinke will pitch, Cole will pitch. Will Harris has been nails all year. He's been nails in a postseason. He got hit for a home run yesterday. I don't think that will change AJ's faith in him. Joe Smith will pitch. He's been nails. Osuna will pitch. You'll see Garrett Cole. We'll probably see Jose Urquidy. Those are the guys. Like I said, unless it's real big one way or the other, those are the guys that they're asking to get 27 outs tonight.
Talk to me about, let's just say I know you're not a homer, but you're in Houston. Talk to me about, from an Astros perspective, who do you want to see pitching for the Nationals? Because for all we know, it could be 3 different guys, at least to start off. What are you thinking? If you're from an Astros perspective?
Well, from the Astros perspective, you want to see anybody but Max Scherzer. But I think Max is going to pitch. I mean, the fact that he didn't pitch Game 5, knowing his history, this is a guy who had a busted nose, went out there and still pitched. Max Scherzer wants to pitch, and that he couldn't pitch for what they were talking about him with having these spasms in his neck, in his back, in his trap. That's this area up here. And when you get that in this area here and you can't lift your arm, or you get this, what happens is you kind of lose sensation in your arm and you can't feel your hand the right way. It's weird. I know because I deal with it. You can't pitch like that. So for him, he must not have been able to even left his arm. They hit him with a cortisone shot. You saw him in the bullpen throwing last night. Interesting thing about that, though, you didn't see him standing on top of the mound throwing full speed. He was standing in front of the mound throwing warm-up speed. No hard kick. These were easy kicks. These were easy throws. He wasn't throwing it at full speed. He was more throwing loosen up. I don't know how long Max can give him. Because I don't know, what happens the first time you've got to try to, you got to throw a hard breaking ball in a tight situation. Does that mean that all of a sudden, you start to feel that tingle? I would hate for him to have to deal with an injury, because you never want to see guys deal with injury. It's the World Series. You want to play the best. You want to beat the best. So I hope that Max is healthy. I don't know how long he'll go, but I also don't, we're kind of into that thing that you saw yesterday where Davey and Chip Hale, like, look, we're going to ride with Strasburg as long as we can because he's always going to be their best option. I think they ride with Scherzer as long as his arm holds up.
Visiting with Patrick Creighton, who has an epic on-air schedule on ESPN 97.5 weeknights locally in Houston from 7 to 9. And then overnights on SB Nation Radio. And but take me now into what it's like to hang out at a Whataburger or a Taco Cabana in Houston. And are they still open? Is Taco Cabana still around?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Okay, just making sure.
I got introduced to that when I moved down here.
Right. So take me into the mind of someone who's in line in Houston, a typical person in Houston at Whataburger. In drawing the comparison between the off the field stuff and the euphoria of this World Series and the unbelievable World Series that you mentioned that we've had here. It's unprecedented, but how much has the off the field stuff impacted the typical Astros fan?
I think what it's done with, all the stuff surrounding Brandon Taubman and his actions, his words, has kind of galvanized the Astros fan where they feel like they're the ones who are, being persecuted. It's like, oh, our team is good now. Now you're coming for us. Now you want to talk junk about us. Like, most fan bases will feel that way. Now, nobody thinks what the guy said was right. And the overwhelming majority of people, he deserved to get fined. Except
Jim Crane. But go on.
But when they, the continuation of it must be the Astros culture because they hired this guy. Well, he wasn't making, inappropriate comments to female reporters when they hired him. It's not like they had a track record. It's not like he walked in and he said, hi, I'd like you to know I hate women,
Right.
There was no sign or anything. It's the reach. It's okay. How can I further the story? How can I make this bigger than what it is? And of course, the Astros fan is not immune to the fact that a lot of the people who were pushing this were Yankees beat writers, were Nationals beat writers, and then the national guys themselves. So, they kind of felt like it went from, a demand for justice to some McCarthyism type stuff of, okay, everybody who knew Brandon Taubman is guilty and they need to be fired. And then Jeff Luhnow hired all these guys, so he needs to be fired. And Jim Crane hired him, so he needs to be fined. Where do we draw the line? When your kid is bad in school, you go, oh, well, my kid failed in school because the teacher stinks. We got to fire the teacher. Oh, and then the supervisor for the teacher, she stinks too, so let's fire her. And then the principal, they had to know that these two teachers stink, so they need to be fired. And then the superintendent, like, how far do we want to go down the line here? The guy who did the misgiving got canned. The team put out a statement that said, we were wrong. Like those 3 words in black and white. And of course, I'm reading this and I'm thinking, back to if you watched Happy Days, because you're probably about my age group.
Yeah.
Fonzie sitting there going, I was.
Yeah, right.
Because nobody wants to come out and say, we were wrong. And then they apologized to Stephanie Epstein, to Sports Illustrated, but that wasn't good enough. Oh, well, did you call her? I'm sitting here in front of you. Does it look like I called her? Like we just did this. It seemed like it was trying to be set up for like a gotcha moment. And we have a lot of that on social media, the gotcha moment. They apologized, they admitted they were wrong, they fired the guy who did it. How many more pounds of flesh does it take to satisfy this need?
We're visiting with Patrick Creighton of ESPN Radio and SB Nation Radio down in Houston. Talk to him about the World Series and what's going on, of course, off the field. Now, I have 2 schools of thought on what you just said. All right,
I probably wasn't allowed into either one of them.
But because, well, let me just say, if you're an Astros fan and you're invested to the extent that you are, or let's just say you're someone who's a kind of a casual fan, but now you've been pulled into this, the games, the success, and we've had the success. And right now in the history of the city of Houston, it's literally never been better across the board. Right. And this happens. It's difficult to ask that person to just drop everything and be bummed out about now the World Series in my team. So what you're saying, I think, is the perfect explanation as to why you wouldn't do that. That said, I think the outsiders that are commenting on this story, right, are responding more to how it was handled than what initially happened with, how it was handled from the very beginning, because at the very beginning, there was a claim that the Sports Illustrated reporter had made it up. And then there was no forthcoming retraction or apology. There was kind of a halfway statement from Taubman himself. And so at that point, the cover-up becomes worse than the crime. And then Luna only makes it worse as we go along. I mean, I'm not going to roll it all out there. So I think that that's why the story got legs. That's why you had people who didn't have to worry about access to the Astros from the outside. Guys like me, right? Like Fly to the Valkyries coming in off the edge, right? Lawrence Taylor, boom. But that's what I was responding to. And particularly in the case of this reporter, having been in these situations, Patrick, many times, written on SportsbyBrooks about people like this, things that I've reported that they didn't do right, or they screwed up, or they were sexually harassing somebody because I found out about it. Look, I mean, this story is going to follow her around no matter what. And when you have a Major League Baseball organization saying, you made this up, you fabricated it, right? And we're in the middle of the World Series. I mean, and then you don't really apologize. You know, you have that attacking statement. You allow Taubman, and then you finally fire him. But then Luna won't tell us anything. I think it's understandable. So what are your thoughts about that whole principle, though, that the cover-up here is what really fueled what was going on in the criticism?
I think it's fair that it's the cover, because the cover-up usually is greater than the crime. I think if Taubman had just come out in the beginning and said, you know what, I was a drunken idiot, and I'm sorry. I said stuff I never should have said. We were in the locker room. I was imbibing way too much. No excuse. I was just a drunken idiot. You probably get forgiven. You get yelled at, but you get forgiven. I do not, and this is one of the things that I think is kind of weird. People don't seem to put together the idea that this guy was the director of baseball operations for the Astros. He was the assistant general manager for the Astros. Do you think he might have had a little bit of influence over what kind of a statement PR would release?
He probably wrote it.
Exactly. And this is the part that I don't understand. Why people, they don't make this connection? Oh, well, somebody in PR should be fired for this. Well, that somebody was Brandon Taubman. Did it not look like
and I'll say
wrote it with the anger and venom that was in a PR statement? PR doesn't usually write stuff like that.
And you're kind of making my point. because Lunow, he's in a position where, look, every single statement that goes out from our organization is going to be vetted by our VP of communications, and it's going to be vetted by our general counsel. And in a case like this, of course, my eyes were laid on it, and our owner. That in every situation where we're going to send something out during the World Series, at the very least, PR, counsel, and all that, they're going to look at it. If Lunow had just said that, that's how organizations run, right? And we believe this guy, and he was lying to us. That's it. Story over, right? And we move on. But he didn't say that. And that's the problem. And now,
eventually they did say that.
Well, wait a minute. Now, have they come out and said, maybe I missed it. Did they say the names of the people? I know there's been reports now in The Athletic, but it's funny. I give The Athletic and other reporters credit for naming the people that may have been involved, but of course they're involved. That's what their job is. That's what's ridiculous about it. And that's why it's ridiculous that Lunow from the very beginning just said, look, we have PR people. We have our general counsel. Of course they looked at it. That's what he should have said. Well, we believe this guy, and that's why we fired him, because he lied to us.
Right. Eventually, that's what would eventually happen. When Todman was fired, we did our initial investigation. Okay. It turns out that, the people we talked to in the beginning, Brandon Todman, lied. They lied. He's fired. I mean, that was pretty much what the outside statement was that, the initial investigation that they did, they were given falsehoods, and it's right there in the statement. It says it, and then they followed it with, "We were wrong, and we apologize." So it took 3 days. Well, most businesses don't operate in 3 days. It took 3 days. They have to play it out in front of the media. Did Lunow stall day 2 when he was asked in front? Yeah, he did. You know what? If you've been working with a guy for however many years, and on the baseball side, you've worked closely together, you had no idea this guy was this big a schmuckaroony, and now it's kind of all hit you all at once. And he's like, man, I was devastated. He probably was, because if you've never seen that side of a person, and then it kind of all hits you at once, you've kind of got that, I can't believe this is actually happening. Like, there will be that sentiment. And I thought that, while people were mocking Lunow, I thought that was a moment of extreme honesty, that he never saw that side of Brandon Todman, never knew that was the kind of guy he was. And now here it is, all playing out in public, and now it's obvious this was him. This is what he did. I think that Lunow was actually hurt by that, and he allowed you to see that. And a lot of people took that as, all right, we need to mock him now.
It's weird, because I totally agree and understand what you're saying. But if I was Lunow, and I've been around, I mean, what's amazing about this is Crane, the owner of the team, Lunow, the general manager, and Taubman, I think all three worked at McKinsey, right? The consulting firm, if I'm not mistaken, all three of them did.
No, Taubman came from investment banking.
Okay.
He was a derivatives guy who had created a formula that won on like daily fantasy sports like 9% more often than even the highest level of winning.
Hey, by the way, Patrick, that's algorithm now. You're not allowed to say formula anymore. Now it's algorithm. But go ahead.
Not bad. Like I said, I wasn't allowed to go to those schools.
Right.
So he had created this algorithm. And he actually originally got hired as an analyst. So from there, he moved up because of all his derivative algorithms. I was going to say formula again, bad me. But yeah, that's basically what he got hired for originally. And because they are such an analytically driven team, those kind of guys move up the ladder fast. So my point with Lunow is trying to the fact that he worked at this massive consulting company that's had a huge role, brought them in for 2 different years, that consulting firm McKinsey, and Crane, of course, worked there as well. And what's happened in that organization, for him not to feel betrayed
by Taubman to the extent that he would have said, wow, it was really tough on me. Do you remember when he did the press conference, Luno, and he said, it was embarrassing. It was really tough on me. It's been a tough day. I wouldn't wish this on my worst. Shouldn't he be directing that at the guy who put you in, that betrayed you? It's almost like he sided with Taubman, or maybe he was trying to save face with his own embarrassment and not acknowledge just how wrong he was about his employee, because it's kind of reflection on him. Do you think that's what fueled his reaction?
I think Luno just isn't a real comfortable guy in front of the media, and we've seen, even before the Astros got good, they had some interesting PR faux pas that would go with Luno or Jim Crane. And look, I think they are very much business first, and everything else is, all right, well, we have to do this. I don't think speaking to the media necessarily is Jeff Luno's greatest strength. It's not what he's hired for, but it's part of his job. And I think he went into that press conference being a lot more emotional and maybe not as directly focused as he should have been. I think it was very hard on him to deal with this idea of Taubman. Yeah, I think betrayal is a pretty good word because of the type of emotion that you would feel from such a thing. And
it's conflicting. You said it earlier. It's conflicting.
Yeah, most teams they're going to be more. They're going to be loyal to their guys up until the point where they can no longer be loyal to the guy. For the Astros, that took 72 hours.
Yeah, and and Luno's in a situation where 99.9% of the chance there is he's going to be fine. Taubman's not going to get him fired. So he's not really in that position I'm trying to reconcile, and you've made some good points about him. The conflict between his embarrassment over being lied to and being placed in this situation by Taubman, and his loyalty to Taubman, his fealty to Taubman, and all of a sudden this is an unprecedented situation he's dragged into, and he's already not very good with the PR. So now that I've talked to you about it and thought a lot deeper about it, it's somewhat understandable what his reaction was. Unfortunately, I think that's really the reason that outsiders came in. Because what about the local media in Houston? Because I know you've been very frank about Jim Crane and the whole context of the situation, because there's a lot to this story more than just what happened with Taubman. But what's the local media approach been like there?
Well, there was, in the beginning with the statements, I think the overwhelming majority of the local media believed Stephanie Apstein's report. And when the story was released about it's a female reporter who wears a domestic violence band and was the person and was tweeting out the domestic violence hotline every game, if you are around the team on a regular basis, you knew exactly who they were talking about. And that particular female reporter is very good at her job, and she's at the stadium every day. And the fact that it would be her because of the fact that she's there every day and everyone knows her, that was the woman that he chose to go after. It's like, dude, you see her every day. She's been
the lion's mouth
for years. How dumb are you?
Right.
And obviously the answer is really freaking dumb. So I think everybody in the beginning, before needing the corroboration from the other reporters, which the Astros wound up putting themselves in that position because they allowed Taubman to be the one kind of directing everything, saying, "Oh, that wasn't true. I didn't say that. Osuna was over here. I was talking to him, protecting him." And then, well, Osuna was nowhere near the situation. It was when a reporter makes something like that, there's no reason for them to make that up. So I think overwhelmingly locally they were believed. When the Astros basically got confronted with, okay, now there are other reporters who are corroborating this story, and it turns out, hey, let's look at the film. Osuna's nowhere in sight, and this guy's yelling. The idea that he was not being forthcoming came around real fast.
Boy, I should have. Well, I should have called you the first day on this because you just said something that I think is really important and really explicates why it happened, or at least why, not why it happened, but why everybody believed her. I didn't know this. She's at the ballpark and does a great job. And having worked in baseball myself for 9 years as a play-by-play guy, being there is a huge thing every day. It is in every business and in sports and covering sports. But the fact that you just told me, if I didn't know this, that she is somebody that had that built-in respect. And so when it came out, there was already this built-in thing that, oh, even though we have the other stuff that she expresses, with the tweets and things like that, she might have somewhat of an agenda here because she's there all the time and she's a pro at what she does. She's not making this up. Now that I know that, things make a lot more sense. The response.
And that's the unfortunate part, was that instead of treating it like a real investigation up front, the Astros kind of Brandon Taubman say, no, this isn't true. Man, that's crazy. And he kind of dictated what their first response was going to be, instead of treating it like a normal, okay, let's get everybody involved. Let's piece together what happened. Let's talk to actual people who were there. They say when they say in their initial investigation that the witnesses were not factually accurate, what they're saying is Brandon Taubman lied. Because if you look at the first statement that they let out, where they basically call Stephanie Epstein fake news. And then the second day, when Taubman releases his non-apology apology, Jim Crane released a statement as well.
Yeah.
And Jim Crane's statement doesn't mention Brandon Taubman at all.
And it's just money that they donated. That was brutal.
All it said was, as an organization, this is what we do, and we will abide by whatever MLB says. And I thought that at the end, we will abide by whatever Major League Baseball says, was Jim Crane's way of saying, if this dude lied, he's out.
Interesting. See, and that's what I picked up. That's why you're wrong. I mean, and now that I know more on the background with her, your tweets also illuminate further, because you are really drilling down. I remember you drilling down, particularly, and you're one of the few people, let alone in Houston, talking about Taubman probably wrote that tweet or half dictated it, And so now I really understand. And now you've kind of given us the translation with Jim Crane. But what about the last thing I want to ask you about? And we're beating the hell out of this horse, I think, by now.
Beat it out.
I mean, that's our job. That's what we do. But what about the culture issue? And when you talk about, as you're Luno and you're in public and you're saying it's not the culture, but I won't tell you who was involved with the press release, right? And then you've got somebody like Jim Crane with this appalling background when it comes to, it's appalling, dude, in a lot of different ways, in terms of how he has treated employees with another company that he had. Do you think this potentially is a culture thing for the Astros?
I think the culture thing is a bunch of bunk. Because if we're going to say, well, the Astros, they made this trade for Roberto Osuna, so, their culture is awful. Well, there's 29 other teams who have probably had a domestic violence abuser, because there's a 20 some odd of them who have been investigated by baseball. All right, we can help. We can poke holes to the Yankees multiple times. They've had the most. In fact, they went to the well twice on Aroldis Chapman. So, are we going to go after the Yankees? We're going to go after the Cubs. We're going to go after the Braves or Bobby Cox. How far do we want to go down the line with this? Every team that ever had somebody that was accused of domestic abuse as a bad culture, that's every team.
Right.
Why don't
totally.
Every team that's ever had a PED guy has a bad culture. Every team. So, people are trying to make more of things than what they are. And I get it. Clicks drive the dollars. So anything that gets clicks is dollars. And if we can put a salacious headline out there, and maybe I should follow my own, words here, because if I had, come out with some nice salacious nonsense, I'd probably get more money. But
dude, that's the thing. Is the great thing about what you did was you told it like it was, and you gave the necessary. I'm like totally sound like I'm kissing your ass, but it's just true that you were talking about stuff that nobody else was talking about, and you got a click for me. That was great about what and so I give you a lot of credit because you cut through the noise for me, and then you gave us even more context from the reporter standpoint. In that I mean, baseball is more than any. It's overrated. People say this about other sports, but baseball truly is a lifestyle. You truly do live with people, and for him to say that in that situation. First of all, just to start, you're in a place where there's reporters, right? It's not like you were in a Dunkin' Donuts. You were in the place where if you were ever going to have an issue lying, it's here. But now and I think it also speaks, now I think about it, it also speaks perhaps to Taubman not being a baseball guy. Right? Because if he had come up in baseball and, they don't put a premium on that. Maybe they do in some areas, but like firing all the scouts, that kind of stuff. When you don't put a premium on showing up every day and what that means to the baseball culture, maybe Taubman doesn't have that appreciation. So that might have been part of it too. But
definitely in that regard, you're spot on. The dude's an analytics and derivatives guy. This is not somebody who talks to reporters. This is not somebody who's around reporters. Dude works in an office. I mean, hell, when he first got started, he probably worked in a boiler room because it's usually where those guys get started. So this is not somebody that we're talking about has any kind of experience with media relations or media in general. He got caught being exactly who he is. You've shown us who you are. You don't have to tell us again. And the funny thing is, the same reporter who used to tweet out that DB hotline, I used to retweet her.
Right. That's awesome, man. That's dude, you're awesome. You're awesome. So now you're on 7 to 9 Central Time in Houston on 97.5 ESPN station, right?
And ESPN 97.5, 7 to 9 p.m. Although tonight I'll be doing, because we have the national coverage, we have the national broadcast for the game, so I'll be doing a special post-game show immediately after the game. And
then also we've got you on SB Nation Radio. You're not really live midnight to 5. Are you? Do they replay those hours?
Do I have to be honest in this situation?
Okay. Dude, what an a-hole. Talk about an a-hole. This guy Brooks, he asked me if I'm sorry. I should know. I used to do overnight.
I'm live 12 to 3, and then they replay from 3 to 5. They replay the 2 hours of the show from there, because if I had to drive home at 5 in the morning, I'd drive into a ditch.
Dude, I'm such a dummy. I used to do overnight. I used to fill in overnights on Fox Sports Radio. Why would I say that? Jesus Christ. But man, I can't thank you enough. This is great stuff. And it's P. Creighton 1 on Twitter. Thanks so much, man, for coming on and doing this. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, man. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
That's Patrick Creighton of ESPN 97.5 in Houston. What a dick I am. Oh, do they replay some of those hours? You're not actually live come on, Brooks. Wake up. I used to be a guy on for Fox Sports Radio, and I was thinking about this yesterday, this week with the wildfires, right? And the wildfires going on here in Los Angeles. I'm way down in the South Bay, so there's never any wildfires down here. So don't worry about me. I know you're really worried about me, but they're right up there around Sepulveda Pass. And I remember when I worked at Fox Sports Radio one time, one of the hosts couldn't get, this literally happened. Fox Sports Radio is based in Sherman Oaks, and it's right over the hill. If you don't know Los Angeles, you have Los Angeles, which is south of this huge hill, and then the valley is over the hill. And so Los Angeles is about 15 degrees cooler Then over the hill, which is the valley, and that is desert. Used to be, still is. But that was the first huge suburb in the United States. America's suburb is the valley. It's bigger than it probably would be the 6th or 7th biggest city if it wasn't part of Los Angeles County. So right over that hill is where, at the bottom of that hill in Sherman Oaks, is where Fox Sports Radio is. And the Sepulveda Pass is the hill to get over there. And so you've had fire here in the last few days on all around the Sepulveda Pass. I mean, it's like Dante's Inferno. It's like a description out of one of the circles of hell. And a few years ago, the same thing happened. And I was working at Fox Sports for Fox Sports Radio at the time. And I was over the hill at the time, living in the valley. And the guy who was trying to do a show, to get on his show, had to drive over the hill. Well, they had stopped traffic at the top of the hill because of the fires. They had stopped the 405 freeway. And all the people that were on the top of the hill in their cars were stranded because the fires were so bad at the bottom of both sides of the hill. Unbelievable. I don't know if that happened this time, but so the guy who was supposed to do his show on Fox Sports Radio was literally like half a mile from the studio, and he was surrounded by fire, and he's with state trooper. I mean, there's probably, 200 or 300 cars stranded up. I mean, he probably could see Fox Sports Radio, the building, Premier Networks, from where he was, but couldn't get to the studio to do the show. So the network's program director calls me because he knows I'm close by. Hey, man, he can't make the show. Can you? And it's like 15 minutes to air, and it's a 4-hour show, right? And I'm just doing nothing. And yeah, sure. Went in, boom, no problem. Had a great show. But and that was an overnight show, I think it was. And so that's what we're talking about. Patrick does midnight to 5 on SB Nation Radio. So we got a little time here, and I want to run some clips of what the reaction was. I kind of laid it out to you. By the way, let me reset. This is SportsbyBrooks on Fancred, our mobile streaming platform. Welcome to the app. If this is your first time on the show, welcome. We do this every day, Monday through Friday, a couple of hours a day, and you're going to get guests. You're going to get the big subjects, the big topics, but you're not going to get what you're going to see on or hear everywhere else. You really aren't. And what we do is actually going to be informative, interesting, entertaining, different. Different can be good. Usually in sports media, since there isn't anything different, there's not even a concept of that. That's why this show exists, right? It literally exists because things happen like this situation with college football and college basketball, athletes trying to get compensated. Things happen. And in the past, I could go on Twitter, I could type it up on my website, but I had nowhere to go where I could listen to other people or watch other people who were educated on the subject, right? Because, you just want to listen to somebody anyway. Well, nobody's talking about this subject. Very little. Maybe they'll skim over it. But there's a lot of substance here because what we're talking about, in particular with this particular issue, is this could affect recruiting in a huge way. And one of the reasons why the NCAA is pushing back, they're not endorsing it. Trust me. The NCAA yesterday came out, well, we're going to let athletes be compensated for it. No, they didn't. They didn't say that. They said, if this basically they said, if this has to happen, if we're going to be forced, we'll take care of it. Trust us. I know we haven't done anything for 114 years. I know that at UCLA right now, if one of the players at UCLA gets hurt, no health care guarantee. But if someone who is a student employee at UCLA falls on their ass cleaning a toilet and they work for the university while going to school there, they get healthcare guaranteed. But the football player doesn't. I know we've been doing that for 114 years. Trust us, we'll take care of it. That's exactly what they're saying. And hey, EA Sports is coming back. We're going to bring the game back, right? You know what that is? That's a big middle finger to California and that law that really does provide, just a tiny grain of sand amount of justice, right? Just the beginning. It tells you what happened in California was a good thing, And I'm looking over here at, okay, well, we're going to get some clips here in a second because I want to show you a little bit of the reaction. I need to stop talking, right? Get to what other people are saying. That's important. That's very important to find out where this is going, because I don't know what the entire perception is out there. But based on what I was just talking about, the NCAA is acknowledging that what California did, right, is significant. They're up against the wall. They're on the run. And now they're coming back. And what are they doing? They're using their student advisory committee, which has 28 students on it right now, college athletes, putting out a statement, pushing back. We shouldn't do this. Don't do it. Right? That came out yesterday as well, a statement from the student advisory committee made up of one Power 5 college football player who plays at Rutgers. Right? Everybody else is a non-revenue athlete on that committee, and they only have their scholarships because of football and basketball players. And they're telling you that because they're so brainwashed that the players who provide us our scholarships should not be compensated for their name, image, and likeness by an outside party. It's not even the school. I've actually heard people say, athletes saying that this will cause us to lose our scholarships. How's that? This is a third party, outside business, paying an athlete an endorsement fee. Has nothing to do with your scholarship whatsoever. It will only lead to your benefit. It's disgraceful. It's disgusting. So the NCAA is using them as a shield, right? And now they come out with this other statement from the advisory board, right? It's amazing. Nobody seems to know who's on that board. Where are they? All we see is Mark Emmert. That's it. The former longtime mercenary college president at LSU, Mr. Football, Mr. Big Time College Football, Mark Emmert. He's coming out and gaslighting in his pathological way, like he always does. And he's coming out and saying, okay, we give in, uncle. It's going to happen, right? But if you read what they put out on ncaa.org, the opposite is true. The opposite. Clearly, this is prompted by the law in California, right? But in the ncaa.org statement, the law in California, right, is repudiated. And all other actions of lawmakers in this statement repudiated. Wait a minute, what's going on here? Right? And the NCAA in that statement indicates that we don't really know what we're going to do yet. We're going to rely, they call it, on the divisions, Division 1, 2, and 3. We're going to rely on their guidance for what rules are going to be implemented. And, it may take till next year or 2021. That's in the statement. So basically, they're treading water and they're trying to stop the other states from moving forward with laws, period. This is designed to intimidate or deceive lawmakers in other states and to stop what California has started. And so they're going to do as little as possible. And they're going to use things, as I said before, the student committee coming out and supporting their side of it. And EA Sports, we're going to bring the game back. Yeah. For all I know, for all we know, this is the only reason they came out and said this. Who's going to benefit? Now, we're going to play the clips in 1 second. In 1 second, because they have EA Sports in it. God, I can't wait to see these. So Cam Smith, our producer, we're going to load up some clips and we're going to give you some reaction. We're going to give you some reaction from the media on this issue. And then I'll talk about what we're going to see here in a second. But what are the odds that the NCAA schools, because it's schools, it's not a single independent organization, comes out and says in a public statement, we are going to re-engage EA Sports with the game, and as a solution to the situation with endorsements, we're going to take the money that we make off those games and we're going to split it up and give it to the college athletes who you're telling us deserve to be compensated. So we don't have to worry about all those laws. We don't have to worry about following laws passed by people you may have elected in your state. They don't apply here. Don't listen to them, even if it's on the books. Because, look, if USC and UCLA, if they want to follow that law in California, we just won't schedule them. And we've already told you that. Right? But now we've got a solution. Now, all those athletes, well, they can go to Chipotle because we're going to give them $5 from this EA Sports deal. That's what's happening. But let's now go to some reaction from around the sports media. And I need to find my list of the clips. This is the definition of cynicism, what's happening right now, and gaslighting. Okay, let me see here. Let me go to our list. And okay, so let's look at the second clip, because I was just talking about EA Sports. On EA Sports that I emailed you earlier today, Cam. Let's go to that one first, and then we'll move on. Go ahead.
NC must embrace change. New tune profit from their name, image, and likeness. What it all means is a great question.
This is in Detroit, by the way.
EA Sports.
This would NCAA.
We do? No, they're not. No one's saying that.
And this gets me.
Here's the thing. The whole pretense of, wow, they can't be employed. Listen, guys. Well, they know what they're doing. So I'm not going to speak to the schools. It's not one organization in Indianapolis. This is all the schools. I'm not even going to address them because they know what they're doing. All right. And the most important point here is they've been doing it for 114 years. We're going to continue here with the clips in a second. This is amazing. I've done a lot of research and developed some films, and I'm working on some TV stuff right now. And one of the things that I've researched for possibly TV is the lives of some of the stars of the early era of college football. Some of those stars include African Americans, whatnot, right? But in this case, and what I'm going to tell you really doesn't matter. But in chronicling these stories as I have in researching them, right, I've thought about how to present it. And especially in the context of today, because it's all about today. Well, why does this matter? Why would I care about somebody in the 1920s? And I remember, and I've had to catch myself. This is college football. I've had to catch myself several times when I've been working on these stories, right, where I'll think to myself, and you know what? Back then, they weren't even compensated. And like in the case of Jack Trice at Iowa State, his name's on the stadium, right? He died because of the malpractice of the University of Minnesota doctors and his own Iowa State doctors. That's why Jack Trice passed away from injuries. The first African-American football player at Iowa State in his first game against Minnesota, because of those injuries, internal injuries that weren't taken care of properly, he died. And so in the and this is like 1920s, in the context of that, you think to yourself, well, but today it's so much better. Thank good. Oh, wait, it's not. And you know what? The NCAA is going to fight to the death to prevent, an improvement of the situation that killed Jack Trice, where there's no accountability whatsoever, and there's no guarantee that anybody is going to get health care playing college football. Oh, but it's only a life-endangering sport. Don't worry about it. And, well, you might not die right away like Jack, but you're going to become a ticking time bomb. All good. And we're not on the hook either. Don't come to us. So let's now take a look at some more clips. So we have a clip from a guy. You may not have heard of it because the media does whatever they can to suppress the existence of Ramogi Huma. Ramogi Huma is his name, and he's an activist who's been fighting for the unionization of players, which should have happened at Northwestern. And that's something that I want to talk about in the future with some of the guys that were involved with that here on this show. It's a fascinating story. Should have happened. And that would be the game changer. But Ramogi's been behind the scenes, and he has been instrumental. You're going to see him here in a second in the clip. He's been instrumental in this California law. So he's part of this this clip. So let's go ahead and play this reaction clip.
Well, on one hand, the announcement is a significant milestone in the fact that the pressure brought by the state of California, the pressure brought by lawmakers in other states and in Congress have finally forced the NCAA to acknowledge that college athletes deserve something for use of their name, image, and likeness. However, the NCAA did not approve compensation for players, and I think that's what the confusion is about. The NCAA specifically authorized benefits, and benefits in terms, they've been very clear. Benefits in this issue must be related to educational expenses. So if you picture a player doing a Nike commercial, the NCAA would make sure that Nike wouldn't be able to pay the player in cash, that maybe Nike pays not anything different than what the NCAA has been saying. The other thing, proposal that would actually solve the problem. Any proposal October here, 3 divisions to consider possibly making a proposal that they may consider.
I just want to play part of what NCAA said.
It's going to be a challenge. It's a much but the schools are going to be able to work through this athletes and allow universities to continue their
to the schools to let them. What do you think?
Unbelievable.
That they in the cow. I leave it to lawmakers are actually states which support. They can simply adopt what California provided. The NCAA, the only what that says is that they don't want to do that. They want to scale back. So full steam ahead. We've been in contact with lawmakers to give them a proper analysis of the situation.
Lawmakers have today to say Republican Senator Richard Burr as well in school. Their scholarship income choose to cash income.
Very calm. Much calmer than me.
I don't college athletes, you know, being college athletes, at the end of the really does, I think what does big part and since we don't do
Right. One of the key takeaways of his comments, and I mentioned it earlier, we're going to rely on the schools. We'll rely on them. Yeah. Okay. So, Gene Smith, he'll be involved. Michael Drake at Ohio State, guaranteed he'll be involved in that process. What have they said? What have they been saying until yesterday? We're going to kick USC out of the NCAA if they follow a state law in California. They're done. We're not scheduling them right now. We're not anymore. Not if they follow the law. Not if they follow a law which allows a USC football player to engage not the school, but an outside party, right, to put together a deal for an endorsement involving their name, image, or likeness, where that third party compensates them. Has nothing to do with the school. That's what this is, right? We're just going to stop scheduling them and freeze them out. And, you know, Ohio State, we're not influential at all. That's not a signal to everybody else. So on this other clip that we have that I had sent you, I know we've got some more that you put together. So for this other clip, Gene Smith, the Ohio State athletic director, who I've referred to, and is part of this past pushback on the state of California. That's what this is all about, by the way, is trying to marginalize and eliminate the possibility that California law will ever be enacted and stop all the other states from moving forward. Gene Smith has been part of that effort publicly. So he is in this clip coming up. So go ahead and run that clip if you can, Cam.
And on their fame, the NCAA college will allow
Oh, it is now? I guess he changed his tune.
Los Angeles the rules in place by January.
Yeah. So we're going to do that tomorrow. I'm going to get some stuff from the past and put it next to that that comment. It's the exact opposite of what he's been saying in public. The past since the California law was passed, bill was passed. By the way, just as an aside, the odds of that law ever actually going into effect and playing out the way it's been portrayed in the media, very small. The odds that it is amended by a future governor or a future California assembly in the next 3 years, much higher. That it never sees the light of day. And I'm telling you right now, this is an all-out blitzkrieg. It's like the first day of the biggest ground invasion in the history of the world. That's what this is. They are pulling out all the stops. And what's really disgusting is LeBron James. The same LeBron James who is telling us that he believes Daryl Morey is misinformed about whatever it was he tweeted about that caused me to lose my deal with Nike in China. He was misinformed and uneducated. Remember that? LeBron James? Misinformed and uneducated about the situation. And then, of course, after saying that 3 times to the media, LeBron James, you remember, the last time at the very end, he says, well, I don't really know that he's misinformed, but I believe that, right? Well, LeBron James, in this case, misinformed, not educated on the subject at all, right? He's the guy, to his credit, that hosted the signing. I don't have a problem with that. I know that he wants publicity. That's fine. It's a good cause. And I know the governor of California wanted it, Gavin Newsom. He wants to run for president. He's using this as a vehicle to get national exposure. So they got together on his show on HBO and did the deal there. Fine. Right? But he's making it sound like this is a silver bullet. And LeBron James could not be more misinformed. And he could not be harming the cause of the people that he is, in his own mind, I guess, trying to support. Right? Think about, especially NBA players, the situation with college athletes. And it's impossible not to bring up race in this situation. It's just impossible because of the demographics. Like, I'll give you an example of when you're forced to mention stuff like that. I'm checkmated into the situation because as an American fighting for what's right, at least trying to shine a light on it, it's impossible to ignore what's going on in the context of the past. I'll give you an example, a similar example of where you're checkmated. William Burroughs, who created Tarzan, that character and that whole series, right? Back in the early part of the 20th century, he started a community, a city in the valley, right next to Sherman Oaks. We were talking about that. And it's called Tarzana, right? And it was designed to be an all-white community. And if you look at the census, the United States Census of Tarzana, they do it every decade. Like the first 3 decades, there was like 50,000 in one decade, 1920, 1930, it'd be like 93,000, 1940, it would be like 106,000, and there were 0 blacks in the census report. So in the case of college athletes, it's the same thing. It's not that different. Less than 3% of the University of Georgia enrollment is black males, less than 3%. What's the percentage of black males on the football team? What's the percentage of black males in the state, right? A state that is about half black, because I've looked it up. So the people that are being affected in this case are by and large people of color. It's impossible to ignore it. And when you look at somebody like LeBron James, the extraordinary wealth that he has accumulated, to his credit, that he is advocating for what isn't even a half measure. It's not even a half measure, right? It's the NCAA attempting to continue to exercise this. It is a monumental injustice. It's the most un-American institution, the NCAA, that exists right now. And it's on our watch. It's on everybody's watch. And 99% of the population, exactly like LeBron James, why would they think that this was a bad thing? Because in the past, of course, the media has gone along with it forever. And now in the last 20 years or so, there's so much money involved. Now nothing's going to happen. Not even close. I'm shocked that what's happening on ESPN, apparently, in fact, I know we have a clip here of Jay Billis, who is on Golick and Wingo on ESPN Radio. And Jay Billis is a guy who's on the right side of this. And to ESPN's credit, he's got a voice, and he talks about this all the time. But I shouldn't say to ESPN's credit. I shouldn't say that. And I have reason to say that. But go ahead and play the Billis clip for us, Cam.
Required to wear armor.
So hard.
Women. So that
I play sports. How does it happen?
come on.
It's
man. Gonna do what's in there.
Oh,
Interesting. Nobody asked it when Dabo Sweeney, and all respect to him, he should make more. But when he makes $10 million a year, nobody says, well, wait a minute, what about the wrestling program? Yeah. What about women's sports? What are we going to do? Where's the money going to come from?
Let's run the Jalen Rose clip too. Do we have time to do that?
The athlete,
or can we get out? Can we get out in time
and could collapse
with the Jalen Rose thing, Cam?
2, 1. Stop blowing. Can profit off their name or likeness. Just because
Okay. I'm glad he said it. Maybe he's off today. He's like everywhere, by the way, right? Especially right now. Well, I hope he's saying that on ESPN. I hate to say that. No, I don't actually. Okay. We'll see what happens. Actually, we might want to think about monitoring it. Brooks, it's your job, right? It is. So thanks a lot, Cam, for your help on that. And thanks for putting up with me today. Very triggered today. The triggered animated GIF of the lady, wobbling back and forth. That's me today. And I don't know how I got through the show without screaming or cursing. It's a miracle. But so thanks for holding my hand. We'll be back tomorrow, and we'll have more crazy stuff every day, noon to 2 Eastern time, Monday through Friday, for our producer, Cam Smith, and for everybody at Fancred here in Los Angeles. This is Brooks Melchior saying so long. This has been Sports by Brooks on Fancred.